Welcome to M&A Mondays, the UK's first YouTube series dedicated to all things M&A. From interviews with the leading figures in the industry, to coffee chats with analysts, diversity panels, all the way through to workshops, we'll be covering it all. We do hope you enjoyed the video, and please give us a like and a follow on our social media. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of M&A Mondays, the UK's first YouTube series dedicated to all things M&A. My name is Jasmine, and I'm a Financial Institutions Group Analyst at the Group. Joining me today is Nikola, an Energy and Powers Analyst and Events Officer in the Group. Today, we're absolutely delighted and honoured to be joined by Carsten Woehrn.
Carsten started his career in early 2000 at J.P. Morgan, working in the London office as a member of the EMEA Diversified Industries investment banking coverage team. After that, he joined J.P. Morgan's North America M&A group in New York, where he focused on originating and executing North American and cross-border infrastructure and financial sponsor transactions, with a particular focus on utilities, power, and renewables. Following from that, he returned to the London office and became the head of J.P. Morgan's Infrastructure M&A EMEA franchise. Carsten is currently the head of financial sponsors M&A for the EMEA region and a global co-chairman of Fairness Committee at J.P. Morgan. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hi, Carsten. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, doing great and can hear you perfectly.
Sounds great. So let's start with our first question. Most people in investment banking will move between banks or look for other opportunities throughout their careers. Carsten, what is it about M&A and J.P. Morgan that's kept you in the industry and with the firm for more than 20 years?
Very good question. So obviously, as you said, I've been with J.P. Morgan for more than 20 years, and it's really been a great journey. It's been exciting, seeing different stations and different geographies in life, and it's also and therefore working with different clients across the world. And when you look at J.P. Morgan, I think you find a lot of us have been with the firm for a long time. Some go back to 25, 30 years, and I think the recipe here is that when we started, really becoming somebody in the investment banking, which was about 15 years ago. We started off as a very small group, actually, a very small firm, and it's been that boutique type feel is still there today. So many of us have been working together for a long time. I think many of us are culture carriers, and I think it just shows that we do care about our culture, and we do care about the people that we have with us. So the small team feel from at the time is still there today.
That's very interesting to hear, and a very good insight into J.P. Morgan, I think. And so another question coming out of that is, you've had experience working in both the USA and the UK. So what was it like working in New York City, and are there any differences or challenges that come with working between the two cities?
Yeah, so personally, I love both cities, and professionally as well. But they're very, very different, as you know, and as you can imagine from a professional perspective. Deal making in the US is very fast. In Europe, I would say we are getting faster, but there clearly are still differences. So you could see very big mergers announced over the course of a long weekend. While over here it can take many years. That's not to say that in the US that would not be the case for certain situations, but I just think that life is in New York is just more fast-paced than we have it in London, both professionally and personally. But I'd also say the sophistication coming from the various different jurisdictions, geographies coming together in Europe adds a degree of complexity, which is both interesting and makes it exciting because not to find the perfect match. It takes creativity and it takes really deep understanding of your clients. At the same time, that also brings challenges with it. But I think deal making in Europe is as exciting as in Europe, in New York.
And following up from that, could you tell us a little bit about the differences in your experience between covering financial sponsors and a typical industry group?
Yeah, financial sponsors are obviously, what I find interesting in financial sponsors is that obviously, number one, there's the financial savviness, right? So when you talk about transactions, you generally have a very educated audience. You have a very up to speed, up to date, sort of like audience in front of you, and that helps getting deals done in some situations better than sometimes on the corporate side. On the corporate side, that doesn't mean that they are less savvy. To the contrary, sometimes actually. But I think the sophistication of our sponsor clients is very is facilitating. Obviously, it also has some drawbacks to it because obviously they are overbanked by many of our competitors, and so therefore if they're fighting for their share is probably even a touch harder than for strategics with whom you generally build long-standing relationships. But again, that's not to say that with financial sponsors you can't build long-standing relationships. I do believe that you can, and in many situations we do actually, and therefore the loyalty or the lack of loyalty to to your trusted advisors that some people might think is actually not really given. So we have some very strong relationships with them, and like every client, after you've gone through a deal, hairy or not, you just come together for life.
Thank you. And now the question that we saw coming up with the younger people, they're really interested in you, and as the head of the financial sponsors M&A for the EMEA region, what does a typical day look like for you, and what would you say are the key traits that allowed you to get to such a senior position?
Yeah, the typical day just doesn't exist, and there's also it's quite because I so let's put it this way. My role obviously is to build a business and to run a business, we have grown quite substantially in terms of obviously our market share, but also our revenues, and so we run north of 60 deals every year just in sponsors, and so I can't execute all of those deals. So I have teams who are executing some of the deals, and I'm probably hands-on on maybe a dozen of deals a year or so. And so my day obviously has those two components, well, three components really. One is managing my business. Number two is originating new business, so pitching for new transactions, right? Whether it's buy sides, public to privates, or exits, sell sides, and then thirdly, it's executing. And as you probably know, when you execute, things can always happen. And basically, sometimes on deals, you wake up in the morning and you think your deal is just running fine. You get complications and you have to jump right on it, which completely messes up the rest of the day because you have to push back, reschedule all the meetings, push back on every other deal team because you have no time because you have to concentrate on that deal. And then catch up with everybody at night or the next morning, and then it starts all over again. So I think in terms of the traits, I think rigor, taking ownership, being relentless, having a vision in mind, with knowing what you want in life, knowing what you want for your business, and running after it, and really taking. I think the one important point is really taking ownership. I think once you take ownership and are accountable for what you want to achieve, you'll be able to achieve it.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a very interesting thing for all our viewers to keep in mind as they start their own careers. Now, let's move on to a new financial instrument that's taken the world by storm in the past year. Witnessing the huge rise in SPAC popularity in North America, do you think that a similar scenario is likely to happen in the EMEA region over the long term? And are the investment banking products going to change as a consequence of it?
So look, absolutely, I think is the answer in Europe, because, as a matter of fact, we have already, brought out a few SPACs in Europe. There's more coming. Amsterdam seems to be the first sort of like, place of choice for listing European SPACs. I think we're going to see more of those. I think there are discussions about making London more SPAC friendly as a listing place. I think that's definitely coming. Look, I mean, this SPACs are not new, but I think the success of the SPAC is new. And I'm just hoping that we will have enough successful SPAC stories at the end of the day to make that movement survive. Because I think the last thing that this industry needs is a series of failures, which means basically that the trading post-IPO is going south, or SPACs are just falling apart at inception. I think so far, people have been really successful, and that's, I think, in most part because they are backed by successful people, by successful and savvy business people, and of course pipe investors, who have a choice these days. And I think therein also lies a little bit the problem in that we have a lot of SPACs right now on the market. There will be more SPACs on the market. Not every SPAC will find the right target at the end of the day. And so yeah, I think there's a clear first mover advantage right now. Let's see how long it lasts. Of course, for us, it's great because we are, it helps us with the M&A revenues. It helps us with IPO revenues. It helps us with financing revenues. So I would say it's an all-around product for us.
That's great to hear. And I think it's great to move on to, your personal experience, because given your career in investment banking and in the financial sponsors group, I have no doubt that you've worked on a lot of deals. And so out of all the deals you've worked on and advised on, are there any in particular that stand out to you? And could you tell us a little bit more about them?
I just want to mention two deals. One is, none of them are sort of like really the big mergers that we've done and I've done also in the past, because actually the ones that I was mandated to sell an offshore renewables wind park in Germany one day. And the seller was UniCredit, the buyer was Macquarie, Infrastructure Real Assets. And we ran through a normal process. We probably have seen everything that could have gone wrong in that process. We've seen it in our process. So, whether you had damage to the turbines, blades falling off in the sea during the process, engineering studies were sort of like not really accurate. We had revenue issues on one cluster. We even found a bomb from World War II in the right in the middle of the wind park. So at some point in time, we would say, it's not going to get worse. We then got final bids. We kind of like got there in the end, but we couldn't bridge the value gap between buyer and seller. And so it took me 9 months of just an associate and me, because all of the rest of the deal team had already abandoned us. And our seller said, no, we're not going to sell. But Macquarie hung around. And we ultimately got them there after 9 months of intense, just sticking to the ball and seeing it through all the way to the end and believing in us being able to finally bring buyer and seller together. And it was literally a very intense 9 months. And it wasn't this was the only deal we were doing at the time, but I had a big focus on it. And so that at the end of the day, we got there. We got the valuation our seller wanted, our client wanted. And that has shown to me that, the relentless, focus And again, something to what I said earlier. If you have the vision, if you have the vision, you generally see the way. And if you're being relentless about it, you can achieve it. The second deal was the sale of PA Consulting for Carlyle last year. That was an all virtual deal. We sold PA Consulting as a big management consulting business that was bought by Jacobs Engineering in the US. And it was very difficult for us to do that because it's a people's business. And there's obviously nothing more matters when you're selling a people's business is to make the people meet who are buying the people's business with the people that they're actually buying. And obviously in an all virtual world, we couldn't do that. But we knew we had to pull off one meeting. And so we did find one location where we could fly a US buyer and a UK seller together. And there was Bermuda. And so we actually did an undercover meeting for 3 days between our management team and the buyer. We flew everybody out to Bermuda, not to sit in the sun, but to actually negotiate the deal and make the meeting of the minds happen. And I'm glad we did that, because without that meeting at the time, it wouldn't have happened. So a lot of creativity, and sometimes just out of the box thinking, sometimes just the crazy thought can get deals done. And I think that's the lesson from that deal.
Thank you very much. And all of those sounded really interesting. And for our last question now, what advice would you give to younger people looking to go into investment banking, and what can they expect from this industry?
Right. So no surprise, it's a hardworking industry, but I would say it's also very rewarding because you just see a lot. And when you look at, particularly when you look at us at J.P. Morgan, you have so many different products, you have so many different industry groups, you have so many different countries. We know I'm good friends with my partners in Tokyo, because we worked to help the government rebuild the energy sector after the Fukushima disaster. And I've got good friends in New York because I spent 11 years over there. I've got good friends in South Africa because we worked with them on deals, and we have intimate relationships with our friends in Hong Kong and Beijing. And so I think what's fascinating is that in every region you have your local network, but you're actually part of a global network that you can tap in at any point in time of the day. And we all behave and act as partners. So when we come together, it's a very strong feeling. And I think seeing that and being part of that, it makes you very powerful, but it also makes you personally it's very enriching for you personally, because there's so many opportunities to learn, and at the same time do your own good and build your own capabilities and build your own client network and do your own deals and do whatever you want to do. Basically, it's very exciting.
Well, those are all the questions that we have today for you, Carsten. I just want to thank you again for helping us out with this initiative and for all the great answers and insights. I really believe that our viewers will greatly benefit from taking notes from this interview. And for our viewers, please do consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And just remember, I started as an analyst actually at J.P. Morgan, a first-year analyst, and I tried to become an intern at J.P. Morgan, but I actually got rejected at the interview. So I tried again a year later, and I got the analyst position, and still here today.
Well,
thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.